Hello, my name is Tan, and in this week's video I want to talk about bias. So this week I got the chance to watch Coded Bias, and if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It focused mostly on bias of AI in computer vision. So I want to give some perspective regarding bias in HR and NLP. Um, I work in HR tech, and I know very well that AI can be biased. And this is a passion of mine to make sure that we build fair systems. So I thought I would share my experiences in dealing with bias in HR and how they relate to the film. So first off, the film made it sound like it was just one model you have to check for bias. Uh, but as I have mentioned in previous videos, AI systems are generally not singular. They're usually multiple models strung together. So for example, one of the models that I'm working on right now is one that converts skills to numbers. The objective is to convert each skill to a vector of numbers, and if done well, these skills that are related to each other will be closer in vector space. And a lot of people would look at this model and say, there's no bias to check. Uh, and that's not necessarily true. I can't definitively prove that there is or that there is not any bias, but what I do know is that not all skills are distributed evenly. So for example, there are skills which are predominantly held by men. So you might not think that a skill can be sexist, but it can still encode that bias. So you got to be very careful about that. And there's really no way of knowing how that bias will manifest, right? As I mentioned, because it's just one model in the system, what you have, if you have these skills and right, because this model just converts skills to numbers, right? It doesn't actually do anything else, right? So if you have a good representation, if you have a good vector representation, then that means that it accurately represents the real world. And the real world is bias, right? And so to a degree, I kind of want my model to sort of maintain that level of bias, but again, I can't check it either. Um, so for this model, I'm kind of in this in this very awkward position, and I mentioned that I can't check it, which sort of leads to my next point. Um, and that is we don't actually always have the data to check to see if there is bias. Um, so, when I mentioned that, we were looking at skills, like my data doesn't come with tags or something to let me know where I can easily count the number of male skills or or a certain race. Um, they're skills, right? There's no way for me to just tag those and add them up and see the distribution and be like, oh, not fair. Um, and that's one example. But I do have another one um, where I'm building another model or working with another team to build a model on matching profiles for duplicates. Or sorry, given two profiles, identify if they are actually the same profile. And you might think that because it's a profile, it's very I should have some data on that, right? Um, but actually, in this example, or in the data that I have right now, I don't have gender, I don't have race, and so I can't actually do some of those checks. And if you think about other problems out there, or sorry, in other scenarios like this, um, I think in the film they also mentioned data privacy regulations, and in some places I believe in like Europe, you can't even capture that data. You're not even allowed to know if somebody is male or female. Um, and so that's kind of like a catch-22, right? Like if you're not even allowed to capture that data, then how can you even check if you're being biased, right? Because um, now, you know, I'm not saying that this is impossible, but it's certainly not easy. And I just wanted to bring that up because in the film, they kind of made it sound like, oh, like you should just go through all the images and check, right? And it's like, I mean, yeah, you could, but that's not very easy to do. Um, so So yeah, I've presented some challenges that I'm having, but I also want to maybe leave you guys with one way that I'm sort of tackling this. Um, so one way that I'm combating bias right now in the work that I do is just taking more time to understand the data that I have. So for example, for my one model, we spent over 4 weeks just understanding the data, doing the exploratory analysis, understanding the distribution of the data, understanding the feature engineering that was done. And the team was actually very eager to try and come up with some baseline model right away. Um, and they did, even though I told them we should probably work on the data some more. Um, and of course, the baseline model, didn't do very well. So we're back to the drawing board. We're going back to the data. We're trying, try to and work on that some more. Um, if you are familiar with data science, this should not be surprising to you. Uh, but if you're not, I highly recommend allocating more time to understanding the data. So yeah, bias is a systematic problem, so there's no silver bullet. So right now, I think it's important to be aware of it and not just blindly assert that a particular problem can't be biased. Even though there might not be a one size fits all solution for it, I think the first step is understanding the problem. And I think this film did a good job at telling the story and making people aware of the problem. All right, so that's it for this one. If you haven't seen Coded Bias, I highly recommend it. It's on Netflix. If you have any thoughts, please leave a comment below, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks.